Now then, round 2 of the Six Nations comes quickly into focus. I think most of us expect round 4, Ireland against France, to be match of the championship. But round 2 is the best all-round offering. All 3 games, really good, really interesting. So, in order, Saturday 2:15, Italy, Wales in Rome, feels very much like a wooden spoon decider. Quickly followed by England in serious need of a win with home advantage, but against the French. And then for Simon Easterby in Ireland, it is Murrayfield on Sunday. Again, really interesting game. Long earmarked as potential banana skin, to say the least, for Ireland. Happy to say Ian Madigan is with us. Hello.
Hi, Joe. Delighted to be on. Great opening weekend of the Six Nations, and even better one, I think, to look forward to.
Yeah, hopefully. Certainly more of an all-rounder. Should say our rugby coverage on Indo Sport is brought to you by Energia, who sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels. Grassroots with the Energia AIL. They are official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. And their Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion, welcoming everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. Energia.ie/rugby is the place to go to learn about those partnerships and to find exclusive home energy offers for rugby fans as well. So, well, maybe given, if you're buying my sales pitch that round 2 is decent, let's go chronologically then and can build up to the crescendo on Sunday. Italy, Wales, 2:15 on the Saturday. I think, over the last 20 years, a game, if it didn't suit people, they wouldn't have broke their backs to make sure they were watching. But I think this one is going to grab people. The Welsh have retreated to Nice in the south of France for the week to lick their wounds after losing 43-0 in France. Italy lost at Murrayfield 1931. As people know at this stage, for the Welsh, it's 13 losses and counting. They lose this one and it'll probably be 17 losses and counting, which is hard to fathom. Dan Biggar is calling it Wales's biggest game in 20 years, which I get and I also don't get. I mean, if they win, they're still terrible. If they lose, they're terrible. I don't think winning this game changes very much, but he thinks it's their biggest game in 20 years.
Yeah, look, it's mad to think that Wales were number 1 in the world 6 years ago, won the Six Nations 4 years ago, and now before this competition started, they were odds on to win the wooden spoon. And after round 1, I'm sure those odds are even less favourable.
And is that just because Golden Generation papered over the cracks, they have now fully exited and this is what we're left with? Is that how you account for such a quick drop-off?
That definitely is part of it. You look at the raw ability of that Welsh squad now. You don't have top-end speed in the back three. You've got an aging back three guys that are arguably past their best. They're certainly not getting any faster anyway. And then in the forward pack, you don't have enough powerful ball carriers. So the way the game has gone, it certainly doesn't suit Wales. And then you couple that with Warren Gatland. He hasn't evolved as a coach, and the style of play that Wales are playing with the team that they have simply doesn't suit them. And, we saw that against France. They just overplayed around the middle of the field, put themselves under pressure and just leave themselves open to a team really playing on top of them.
It's funny, Gatland afterwards said we overplayed. So he acknowledged that was a mistake. That wasn't necessarily the plan. So if they can't overplay, are they just reduced then to a very conservative game plan, kick lots, bish-bosh up the middle, hope something happens? That doesn't sound like a very fruitful one either.
No, it doesn't. But there's other things you can do. Obviously, look, your kicking plan is going to be a big part of it when you have a limited squad with limited ability. They have a good 9, in Thomas Williams, who's a good box kicker, and they've wingers who can get up and chase, contest in the air, and then it's all about being effective on breaking ball when you do get those counter-attack opportunities.
Yeah.
But they were trying to play like we've spoken about Ireland's attack and playing width to width. The game has moved on from there. What Wales need to work on is a really accurate, short-sided attack, and having good deception at the line, trying to slip bodies through and then trying to get an offloading game going.
Yeah.
They're playing around the middle of the field against France. You just simply can't do it. The size and power of that team, when you get it wrong once, it's pretty much equals a try.
It's pretty interesting you say that, because first 10, 15 minutes, and obviously pre-game, everybody was predicting the worst for Wales. And so they had quite a bit of possession around the halfway line, pretty centrally. And you know, like, so I'm sort of fooled by the glamour stuff. I thought, God, there's kind of pretty little shapes in attack there, and they're kind of, you know, go a few passes together. And I suppose it's only 5-10 minutes in where you start to think, God, they're really going nowhere, though. I mean, I'm not even sure they've made 10 metres here.
Yeah, and that was the theme of the whole game. They'd have possession on the French 10-metre line, and they'd go a phase, and then they'd end up on the halfway line, and then go another phase, and then before you know it, they've lost 20 metres. And then they went with an inexperienced out-half, like the out-half and centre partnership. There was no cohesion there, and like you could tell literally after the first 5 minutes that this was going to be a long day for Wales, and it just played out that way. Like, if you're looking at the positives, they tackled their lives. You know, they really put themselves about. They contested really hard at the breakdown, and arguably weren't given the rewards that they deserved there. I thought there was multiple times when they could have been given penalties that, you know, a bit of a hometown ref. It's a tough place to referee in France, but that could have balanced the books a bit. But it was very hard to pull positives from that Welsh performance. And I think, look, Italy are no world beaters, but they are a team that has top end speed. They are powerful. We saw that against Scotland, and they really made Scotland sweat, you know, getting it to 19-all. Like, that's a true contest. I know it slightly got away from them towards the end, but that was a true Six Nations match, you know, where it could have gone either way. And you're thinking, are Scotland going to throw this one away? But Italy are a side that are suited to chasing teams. They're not particularly good in front, you know, even when they're playing weaker opposition. And we saw this in the World Cup. You know, they get their heads in front. They struggle to know what to do. When the pressure comes off and they're chasing an opposition, and we saw this throughout the Six Nations last year. You know, they went ahead against England. They put Scotland under pressure. But they ultimately weren't able to close it out when the pressure was really on, and you had to, you know, make good decisions to keep yourselves in front. So I still think it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle, but I would be confident that Italy will win this game.
Right. They are 6 points favourites as well, and there's no history against them or psychological baggage against them, because they've beaten Wales twice in the last 3 years. So it's not like they're having to do something new in that sense either. And as you said, against the Scots, from 14-0 down early on, and even 10 points down half time, they got it back to 19-19, and it stayed that way until the hour mark. So it's quite impressive the way they took their penalties and got themselves back into the game. For Wales then, I guess a final thought, they, in their last three, as you know, as well as this losing streak, at least England, who we'll come on to, can console themselves with the fact that we're staying in games for a certain portion and coming out the wrong side. Like, Wales have been beaten by 30 in their last three. You know, these are demolition jobs. First time scoring no points in this championship since 1998, pre-Six Nations days. You said no real silver lining. I did really have the thought that this is very bad for the tournament. You know, round two is beautifully even now. Because Wales play Italy. But if Wales are a shambles, and if Italy, you know, don't maintain this, and the worry with Italy is they seem to have undone all their good work at academy level, and, you know, if they sink back a touch, you don't want weeks where 2 of the 3 games are completely predictable, you know, out of 4 rounds out of 5. Because the great thing about this tournament over the last 25 years is, or 20 years, say, is just how competitive it's been. That would be a slight worry for me in the Six Nations if Wales keep going in this direction. Yeah,
and you know, the tough away game when Ireland have France and England at home on a given season, which we have this year, was typically the Welsh game. And, you know, if you think back to Joe Schmidt's era, you know, he struggled to win in the Millennium Stadium. And they still have an amazing record over the last 15 years in the Six Nations. Whereas now you're looking at Wales and Italy as away games as a formality for Ireland. I'd be very surprised if we didn't beat them by a minimum 14 or 20 points in both of those games. And as you said, that's not good for the competition, and that will promote the conversation for relegation. I don't think that will will come to pass because of the powers of the home nations and the impact that would have from a revenue perspective. But it's hard to see a route back for Wales at the moment. I think, look, for me, an obvious one is get settled with an out half. Like, I couldn't understand the decision behind that. They tried Johan Lloyd last year, and I played with Johan in Bristol, a really talented guy, and I thought he was just someone who, if they stuck by and got 10, 15 caps underneath his belt, at this point he'd be really stepping up. They also tried Callum Sheedy, another guy who's tried and tested at the top level. He wasn't involved. And then the obvious one, like Gareth Anscombe, is playing particularly well at the moment for Gloucester. And to say that he's too old, it's one thing, a team like Ireland or France squeezing out a guy who's too old, but the team's still functioning really well. If you've got an old guy who's clearly the best in his position, you stick by him for a competition like the Six Nations. It's different from maybe a summer tour to the Americas or an autumn international where you're trying to build a squad leading into the Six Nations. There's too much on the line, and I think he's going to live to regret that decision.
Okay, so that's Gatland under ferocious pressure, and Wales in big trouble if they lose that game, as you think they quite probably will. It will be followed by the game at Twickenham then, England against France. England have now lost 7 of their last 9. The word seems to be Caden Murley is unavailable, so a few things shifting around, including, most noteworthy, Marcus Smith to full back. I mean, it's a big old change from Freddie Stewart, isn't it? This, like, just in philosophy and size and in what they offer. And Finn Smith will come in for his very first start. No pressure. France at Twickenham, must-win game. Finn Smith, in you go. Does this make sense to you? Marcus Smith to 15, Finn in at 10?
Not really with the way England are playing. I think one of their big strengths is their aerial contest, and they got great value out of that against Ireland in the first half. Look, Marcus Smith is a quality out half, and he is a game breaker, but I personally wouldn't be picking him at 15. I think you can get over the top of him early. He's not the tallest of guys. And you also lack that kind of physical impact when you're coming up against big bodies in the wide channels, whether you're playing.
Bundyaki nodding in agreement somewhere, because Smith was one of the 3 who just made no impact on him.
Yeah, and like you look at the difference, like defending at full back has become really tough. It's far more physical than it used to be, and like it's a massive strength of Hugo Keenan's. Like he's probably the best one-on-one tackler in the world, I'd say.
Is he? Because I mean, like he's not a big guy compared to Freddie Stewart, for instance. So obviously his technique and his timing is spot on.
Yeah, and for any young boys and girls who are listening, like it's a very safe way of tackling as well. His ability to dip late, keep his head up, and be really accurate with where his shoulder hits the body. He's not necessarily driving the guy back, but he's getting them on the ground really quickly. And that's ultimately what you want to do in that situation. And when you grasp someone quickly like that, it's very difficult to offload the ball because all your momentum is going quickly towards the ground, which, offloading when you make a line break is ideally going to lead to a try. So,
and the logic of him dipping late is eyes on the prize, assessing the situation for as long as possible.
Yeah, the skill with dipping late is if you have someone running at you and you dip too early, you'll get either sidestepped or they will drop their weight on top of you. Whereas if you can stay upright for as long as possible, you're still agile. You can still move left and right. And then the dip nearly surprises the attacker.
Is it hard to do?
Very hard to do. Like that would be a big part of skills training, would be practicing your dip late and then accelerating through the impact zone.
And why is it hard to do?
Part of it is like your ability to react late. Like this is all moving. Like these are milliseconds we're talking about, where a player is coming at you at speed. Yeah. You may be moving forward yourself. The biggest difference there is there's so much space either side of you versus defending maybe in the 12 channel when you've your 13 outside you, your 10 inside you. There's far more variables or opportunities for the attacking player. And by staying upright, you also run the risk of the person just running straight at you. And if you get your dip too late, you're not going to be able to get your shoulder into the midriff of the attacking player.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So that's where Marcus Smith is going to go. I guess he's a counter-attacking threat. That might be some of their thinking, so we'll see. I'm seeing and listening to and reading very contrasting interpretations of England's performance by, even their own pundits. So some saying really good, really positive. Others, actually we were nowhere near Ireland. And some of the usual stuff that comes up when you're talking about your own team. We're not nasty enough. This kind of stuff has been said about them, and we don't have the ball carriers. So where does the truth lie with what England produced on Saturday for you?
I think they shot themselves in the foot before the game. They decided to go with a back row of the Curry brothers and Ben Earl. So it's one thing doing that. It's another thing doing that and announcing it on the Tuesday and telling your opposition we have no height in our back row. And look, it was predictable that Martins was going to start with the Toji. That worked for them in the sense in the first half, they made a lot of impact tackles. They made 8 impact tackles in the first half, which is actually a really high number.
What's an impact tackle?
An impact tackle is where you're making contact and driving the attacking player back.
Okay.
So when you make one of those, typically your team will come in and counter ruck, and there's a high probability that you will get a turnover or win a penalty.
Yeah.
So
which they did. I mean, they did a number in Ireland breakdown first half.
Yeah, and that's really impressive. And then in the second half, they made 1 impact tackle. So that's a pretty big drop off.
What does that suggest?
It suggests that the Irish attack was more going to the edges, where it's much harder to make impact tackles because there's more space either side of you. It's harder to get your body in front. Whereas if you're playing a tighter game and you're running at second or third defender from the breakdown, it's much easier to go really hard at the midriff. If you miss, there's someone there to cover you.
So are you talking about some of these skip passes out to low against Mitchell? This was a concerted Irish plan. It wasn't just on a whim.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a big part of the Irish plan. Was look, they defend with Mitchell on the wing. Marcus Smith ends up out there quite a bit as well. Let's just get the ball in our wingers' hands and give them genuine one-on-one opportunities, and hopefully they can make something happen. Now, in the first half, I thought we went to width too early on multiple occasions, and that's where we did look, a bit clunky. But the plan was to just give our wingers opportunities on the edges, and then we got the fruits of that in the second half when James Lomu was catching fire down the edge, the quality of the Irish passing to get the ball there, and it wasn't just our out halves. Like Dan Sheehan was throwing one out there, Gary Ringrose threw a good one out there.
Yeah.
But that was a clear part of the Irish plan. This is where their weaker defenders are. Let's get our strongest attackers running at these guys. But it would also show you, Joe, that maybe they're not that fit, and I think that ties into their inability to persevere with the blitz defense from last year's Six Nations and this year's autumn. And you look at the drop off from the impact tackles into the second half, and they did look tired. Like you look at some of the line breaks that Ireland made, they were pretty poor decisions from the English defenders. And then when Ireland got in behind, I'm always looking at the defending team's ability to reconnect. So can you communicate on the run while your team is being broken and connect with the guy inside and the guy outside you? And ultimately, you've just got to hang in there for the next phase.
Yeah.
And Ireland and Leinster do that particularly well. They do concede line breaks, but they scramble well. When Ireland made line breaks at the weekend, they scored tries.
Yeah, I did find myself thinking in the first half, God, if England can maintain this energy and this pace, because they did look more energetic than Ireland and just alive, I thought, well, they'll bloody deserve to win if they can maintain this for 80 minutes. It was a ferocious first half effort. I suppose the other thing you would say about England is once Ireland got back into the game, got level and certainly got ahead, then suddenly the English plan looks so limited. And they just persevered with it, and they never really looked like they were going to get back into the game. Whereas first half, at 10-5, if they'd got another score, it would have been very interesting. But once there was equilibrium, you just kind of thought there's no way back for them here.
Yeah, and the reality is that's the skill of creating a game plan. If you create a game plan and it looks amazing in the first 20, 30, 40 minutes, but it's not going to see it through 80 minutes, there's not a whole lot of value in that.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of it, I found it very interesting listening to Simon Easterby after the game. And he said, look, we had quality set plays to break them down early in the face count and not have to work too hard. That is a big step change from Ireland from the World Cup and even Ireland from the autumn, where they're thinking high phase count, wear teams down. They've realised now that high phase count actually wears them down because of how tiring it is to keep finding your shape and attack, how tiring the breakdown has become. When Ireland are attacking now, they want to score within probably the first 5 or 6 phases. And when they get past that, they're probably looking to go aerial or play high percentage.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let's come back to that in 1 second. So, round off the Twickenham game then. The French put on the Dupont show against Wales. They probably never had to leave third gear, really. Obviously, 2 years ago, Twickenham, they put 50-odd points in England and it was disastrous, really. Borthwick may not well survive something like that happening again. So it's a really huge game. What do you expect to happen here?
I expect similar to the Irish game. I think England will hang in there first 40, 50 minutes, and the style of their defence, it's much harder to break them down, especially earlier in the game. They're in full credit to them. They were much more connected. They'll be able to shore up their edge defence. Missing one-on-one tackles, you'll get that right the following week. You'll have a bit more determination in the tackle. But I look at 50 to 80 minutes against France, and you're thinking of like the game breakers that England have. They've very little experience coming off the bench. I think it's really hurting them that the top English players that are playing in France, the likes of Farrell, Laws, even Sinclair and Willis, who's with Toulouse, and
really
probably arguably their best back row. Like if you've some of these guys coming off the bench for England, I'd have much more confidence. But I think they had about 90 odd caps on total in the bench. Whereas like if you had the likes of Farrell and Laws there, bolster a lot of experience that would add value during the week. I'm not mad on the England centre partnership of Slade and Lawrence. I thought they fatigued as the game went on, and Ireland's passing really began to unlock them. And then you think of like what the positive impact that Gibson Park had on being able to manipulate the defenders around the breakdown. James Lowe's try in particular, like that was a really nice piece of play from Gibson Park. He spots Genge, slightly isolated, runs back at his inside. Genge thinks it's dinner time, goes to hit Gibson Park and slips low, clean through inside Cunningham South. That was a devastating play. And you've got someone who's even better than Gibson Park in Dupont coming up this week. And I think while England are going to have a plan to get at Dupont and try and catch him man and ball, they will get it right. They will catch him. He'll offload. The odd time you'll catch him. But when he gets it right, quite often it ends up in a try, and he will have big moments in that game that England won't be able to counterpunch.
Well, one last one on him. He was just magnificent on Friday. He was the only thing that made the game worth watching, really. Like it was a 43-0 non-event in many ways, but he was a joy to watch. He does something. I remember saying to Shane Horgan in the studio, and Shane was like, I think it could be just his aura, because great players have an aura. He kind of does. You guys, you've jargon for everything. There's probably a word for it, like paddling or something. But he gets the ball, and he'll and this can be on halfway, or this can be in the opposition 22, or even like 10 meters out when you would think we're going to shoot up. So he'll get the ball and he'll hold it in his two hands, and he'll trot one way, head up, and no one will come near him. And then he might think, nah, and he'd turn around, trot back the other way. And like, I would just think, well, you're going to get smashed, or that's not good. And yet he makes it look like I'm slowing this situation down completely to my pace. I'm going to do it I'm going to wander this way and wander that way, and I'm going to pick a moment. And you, opposition, you're going to sit there and wait. And I'm like, how is he getting away with this?
Yeah, it's like he's controlling time. It's amazing, but it's the tools that he has to get out of the trouble that he can find himself in. So, one-on-one duels, like he's extremely powerful and physical, so he can wriggle his way out. If an individual defender jumps at him, he loves that, and players now know how to play with Dupont. Once he's in possession of the ball, run good lines off him, because players are so obsessed with getting him, it's going to create dog legs in the defence. And then like there was a moment in that game where I was watching, I just started laughing. Like he picks the ball up, he dummies the crossfield kick, and then he decides he's going to run. So like, what does that do to the Welsh backfield? To think, right, well, we can shoot up nice and high now, get in front of the opposition winger. So they do that, and then he goes, "Oh, the kick's back on," drops it on his foot, crossfield kick, try. Like, how do you defend against that? And yeah, look, it's just his speed, his power, his passing game. The variation of his passing game is the best I've seen. His ability to drop it on his foot and do crossfield kicks, you simply can't cover it all. And the way he played against Wales, you're not going to see him play that way against England. Like there was definitely the French jouet. Okay. He probably didn't have a whole lot of respect for how Wales were defending him or defending elsewhere, because they did try and really shorten up their defence and it left space elsewhere. And once he figured that out, it was child's play.
Okay. So Scotland-Ireland, 3:00 on Sunday. Really interesting game. Let's just finish off on that point you made about the Irish attack, because I haven't heard anybody else say that. And to be fair to you, I haven't heard many people pick up on Easterby's point. So quality kind of set plays to try and break them early in the phase count. So you think Ireland have looked at the situation and are now saying, we want to bust teams open early. And if we go 5, 6, 7, 8 phases, the days of like phase 18, 19, 20, Sexton pulling the strings, you think they're very consciously moving away from that now?
Yeah, I do. And it's one thing saying that we want to score earlier in the phase count, but it's a very different thing to doing it. And like, you need to have a sharper attack to be able to do that. And I felt Ireland's attack at the weekend versus the autumn internationals, they were squarer at the line.
Right.
They were running with much more purpose. So, you know, this kind of out the back shape, moving the point of contact, trying to get into like 6th, 7th defender, which was largely what Ireland were doing when Johnny was there. I felt the front door options, the guys who are running the short lines off the person in possession, were much more live options. And like, that's when.
And I wonder, so it's fascinating again. So was there a degree with the back door, as you said, getting out to 6th or 7th defender? Could there have been a degree that Ireland started to really enjoy that style of rugby? You know what I mean? Like, and it's so effective for them. But then obviously teams start watching it. This almost sounds like a back to basics. Let's keep this defence honest, front door, and then maybe in time we might think about, you know, more backdoor options. But in the short term, that's first principles kind of thing.
Yeah, very much so. And that's where, if you become predictable and you just play front door, you just play back door, like what does that do to the opposition defense? They start to kind of hedge their bets, and they're nearly sliding out the back to get to the defender out the back. And Ireland were getting caught behind the game line. We saw that multiple times in autumn. So like the Irish attack of like playing off 9, playing that forward pod, it goes out the back to 10. We'd more variation with that, and it wasn't just playing the ball inside and outside. It was the variation of the width off 9.
Okay.
And look, Gibson Park's pass allows Ireland to play this way. And that's what really impressed me. I actually spotted Bristol doing it earlier in the season, and doesn't surprise me. Pat Lam is a forward thinker, and the Leinster guys obviously were up against him. I'm sure Andrew Goodman was looking at it, saw it and liked it, and it wouldn't surprise me if he said, look, I'm going to slip that into my back pocket and make it even better and pull it out come the Six Nations.
Right.
But if you look at the kick receipt that Ireland get, that leads up to the try off the back of Conan's break, Ireland have nearly doubled the width of the forward pod playing off 9 there. It's a 4-man pod is what they've gone with. Usually it's a 3. Right. And with the 3-man pod, typically Ireland would play the second man. He'd have the option of tipping it to the third man or playing it out the back to the out half. In this instance, Gibson Park fizzes it across to the third man. And that, you know, what that does to the English defence, the person who's defending a 3, suddenly the ball is skipped out across him. Now Slade has a decision to make. Is he going out the back to the Irish attacker, or is he covering front door with Conan? And he makes the gamble as such of reading out the back, and they just tip it on to Conan, and Conan slips through line break clean through the middle, and that is devastating to any defence. Okay. But that comes from the variation of how Ireland were attacking and the live front door options, not just playing out the back.
Okay, that's really interesting. High technical analysis for us. I suspect some people will be hitting pause to go onto the YouTube highlights right now to look out for some of that, because four-man pods, yeah, I mean, that stuff's not occurring to me, I have to say, when I'm watching the game all that often. Couple of other things then to get your thoughts on. By the way, the aerial duels, wasn't it interesting? I think we're watching a bit of a step forward on that front. I was going to say it's a GAA thing. Freddie Stewart said he's watching AFL. The days now of like, I'm going to go up and take it in the breadbasket in my chest, I think are gone. I think now if you're going to be an international fullback or wing over the next decade, you now need to be able to go up hands above head and take it Billy Joe Padden style. Yeah. James Lowe did a great one in the first half, like amazing catch. And Freddie Stewart, like I said, went up and got one hands above the head. I now think that will be in 10 years. They'll be looking back on, those guys used to catch it in the chest.
I know it's an evolvement of the skill level that you need in the backfield. Like, you know, when I was playing, it was, you'd gone from catching the breadbasket, which might be just in front of your lower rib or your belly button, to look, if you need to catch it higher, catch it up on your upper chest, and that can make a difference. Or for me, being a shorter guy, I would often get my body, turn my body to the opposition player and try and create a bit of space that he would have to reach over me to try and get it, and that worked particularly well for me. But the way it is now, like if you've got a 6'4" or 6'6" guy coming over and he's reaching with one arm over the top of you, he's going to create breaking ball, and the only way to contest that is go up with two yourself. What I would like brought in, I'm a big fan of the rule change, and I like seeing the contest in the air and like getting rid of that escorting. That's a brilliant change, but I would like it to be brought in that regardless of you going up and slapping the ball back, you have to make a genuine effort to catch the ball. You can't just go up and slap it back, because
it's a huge advantage. Yeah,
it's too favourable though to the team that's making the kick, I think.
As a neutral, I never mind the chaos though.
Yeah, true. That's a very fair point, actually. Yeah, my gripe with it is because you can't escort, it's very hard to be in a position to get the scraps. So if the team that's made the kick can flood the scraps area, that's pretty advantageous.
Oh, listen, and maybe that overly incentivizes kicking, so you don't want a kick fest either. So it's really hard to get the balance of these rules right. Couple of other things. You had wondered about how Ireland would defend, Nina Barr influence, etc. England busted them open. Like first half, it was not comfortable for that Irish defence, and then they seemed to really get to grips with things. I wouldn't say we saw Leinster style blitz. Any great change in how Ireland defend, or did we?
No, we didn't. We didn't see that aggressive blitz defence, but the last try, I wouldn't read into it a whole lot. It was kind of scrappy enough try, missed tackles. There's nothing system there that you would be looking at and go, the system's broken. Off the back of the Leinster players playing that blitz defence, the system that they're now employing, it's not as passive as what England and Australia were doing, but it's not as aggressive as what we've seen with Leinster. I know for a fact they'll find it really easy to defend in that system, because the decisions that they're making now, they've got a bit more time than they would when they're playing in a Leinster jersey. So that's why we'll see tackle success should be really good. Okay.
The line out we were all watching with interest. It's been bad for 18 months now. They were 23 for 23. Must be said, England did not contest a lot of them.
Yeah.
Odd decision. They prioritize curries and breakdown and all that kind of stuff. What did you make though? Like there's line out, not all line out success is equal. So talk to us about the type of line out success Ireland had.
Yeah, like look, 23 from 23, great result. And but you dive into that and you realize that 83% of those 23 were won at the front. We got away with it against England, and what helped again was Gibson Park's length of pass, his ability to throw from the front of the line out, get it out into the 12 or the out half.
Okay. That lets us cheat the system a bit.
Yeah, but when teams see that, you can shoot tail gunners off the back of the line out, and you can either go for the intercept or you can get man and ball well behind the gain line. Okay. Mauling from the front of the line out is very difficult. The team can just slam you up against the touchline, and if the maul does go to ground, you're looking at 13 players on feet. They're going to absolutely smash you and it's very hard to build any sort of momentum in your attack. Typically, you're just going to go aerial off the back of that.
Yeah.
But the reason why England didn't contest a whole lot, well, they only really had a Toje who could get up. Martins isn't a defensive lock, and the back rows are so short. But it was interesting. Both teams favoured just winning the ball from the line-out. Like England went to 4-man line-outs, and 4-man line-outs are great for when you're trying to do an exit and you can just set up a breakdown after 2 or 3 phases and kick the ball. They're not good to attack from because you just have so many bodies on their feet and typically filling the middle of the field, and the line-out itself, you're going to have those players adjusting back into position. So even if you were to hit the middle and go back the short side, it's not an effective attack.
And do you think it's fair enough for Ireland, given the last 18 months, to be a little bit conservative in their ambition and say, okay, obviously in 2-3 years' time, a World Cup, we want to be hitting the back of the line out and snazzy attacks off it. In the short term, we're all at sea here. Let's just stop giving away the ball at lineouts.
Yeah, and they definitely went back to basics. The players didn't look the way they did in autumn, where it was like they nearly looked like they were thinking of too many things, or it was overcomplicated. Look, I'm not a line-out expert, but sure, I know what good looks like at the same time. What I would say is, to beat France, we will need to win more ball from the middle and the back, because of their power.
Okay, well, let's watch out for that at Murrayfield and see what they do. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, I was trying to avoid it because obviously that's all anyone's talking about. The number 10 situation.
Yeah. What do you want to ask?
With Prendergast, everybody is in agreement that Crowley was excellent for 22 minutes.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.
With Prendergast, a very interesting spectrum of opinion. I've heard people who watch their rugby and know their rugby say everything from, he actually really wasn't very good, he wasn't good, to, oh man, you saw his class.
Yeah, and he had a lot of involvement. I thought Rog was on off the ball yesterday. I thought he explained some of the kicking, and it certainly resonated with me. When you're really amped up and adrenaline's coursing through your veins, your timing with your kicking out of hand can be affected. You're kind of amped up. So what used to happen with me was I'd get my foot in too early to the ball, and I'd end up kind of kicking it from the top of my foot or kind of in around my ankle, and the strike wasn't as sweet. Or I'd be so amped up when I'm trying to go aerially, I'd kick it too far, or too high and too far was quite often my error. And I did see a bit of that with Sam. The one I was disappointed with in a way, but also had like a lot of respect for, was he goes for an open field kick where he's spiraling the ball, as we've seen him do multiple times this season. When you go open field, so if let's say your forward have set up a ruck on the left-hand side of the pitch, we'll call it the 15-meter line, and you're kicking to the open side of the pitch. Yeah. When you do that, you have to do one of the above. You have to either find grass, you have to either kick it particularly long, or you need to create a genuine contest. The reason for that is your team is very exposed on counter-attack when they're all coming from the opposite side of the pitch. Yeah. He goes for a spiral kick. If he can pull that off and pump it from 22 to 22, as we've seen him do it, you're a hero. But Marcus Smith's in the backfield. He hits a spiral, catches the back of the ball, and Marcus does a fantastic job to get under it. And now suddenly England are straight back into the Irish 10-meter line. Ireland's attack is all over the place, and they score 2 phases later. And that was largely down to Prendergast.
Is that the kind of, it's funny, we were talking about Rory McIlroy yesterday. I know you like your golf too, and Rory was leaving driver in the bag a little bit at Pebble Beach. And he was sort of saying, mate, 10 years ago would I left driver in the bag on those holes? Probably not. And so akin to Prendergast, McIlroy can hit his driver, but there is a time to leave it in the bag. Is that a kind of situation where a seasoned out half, even though they might say to themselves, I'm pretty good at hitting this damn spiral, and I'm sure Prendergast is, they can do it. They'll say, even though I'm a 7 out of 10 of bombing one perfectly here, I'm just not doing it. It's just not the done thing. Is that where you would want him to get to? Or is that like a guy who's overcoached and you lack ambition and you got to just do it as you feel it too, Sam?
Yeah, look, really interesting way of looking at it. And, you let's say your team gets the momentum back in a game, you score a try, the opposition are doing a restart, your team are amped up, and you go, right, now's the time I'm going to twist a knife in and I'm going to go for that big 22-22 spiral kick. You pull it off and you're the hero.
Yeah.
Doing that at the start of the game when it's England are amped up, it's a real arm wrestle. Ireland had no real foothold in that kind of first 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. That is the time that you just go to a really high percentage kick and just wait for your moment.
That's game management 101.
That is game management, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I presume he'll learn that. That's a learnable thing.
Yeah, and the other way of looking at it is the bravery to go for a kick like that in, you know, such a big contest. And, you know, we certainly don't want to take that away from him. That's why he will be great. Right. But yeah, look, I was impressed with Crowley when he came on. His passing was really, you know, really zippy. Probably the zippiest I've ever seen it. He was taking the ball to the line. He looked quick. He definitely has a bit more physicality than Prendergast. What I'm not mad on is, and this used to drive me mad when I was playing, would be, the score was, you know, 13-10 when Sam went off. And then when Crowley went off, he got Ireland to 27-10. That's not a good way of analysing out-half play, because if you're the guy who was on for the first 50 minutes, you could have had loads of opportunities, 15 opportunities, and you only made do with 2 of them. You're the guy who comes on after 50 minutes and the momentum is completely swung against you. You might only get 4 opportunities and you make do with 3 and your team goes on to lose and people are assessing you on the score. It's just a bit of a waste of time doing your analysis that way.
I definitely get more from you on Crowley in a second. So Prendergast, the kicking off the tee, we saw overcooking a few kicks. Maybe that's the occasion. That seems like a fairly valid explanation for that. The game management point you make, really interesting. First 10, 15 minutes, you're under the cosh. Don't go for the high tariff one. What about general play? Like he did, you know, first half, it sticks in the mind because it always just looks well. He did a few nice loop plays and orchestrated things. Was Prendergast good in general play to your eye?
Yeah, he was. His timing on that loop play is lovely. His passing to the edge is a real strength of his, both sides, left and right, and his ability to stay square when he's doing it, which means that it's more of a one-on-one on the outside. Whereas if you're lateral when you throw it, it means that it's going to turn from a 1v1 to probably a 1+1 because the defender is not going to respect the out half who's throwing the ball. Finn Russell does it particularly well, and I'm sure we'll see that this weekend. So there was lots of positives in his game. It will be interesting to see what they do this week. They may go with Crowley because he's a bit more physical playing away from home. But the great thing is we've got two quality guys and another quality guy in reserve. So let's use them.
Yeah. So Crowley then, that kind of return to form, that rubber stamps it. Saturday rubber stamps it.
And it was coming. Like he really stepped up against Sarries. It was, you know, a slightly scrappy game, but you could definitely see the form lines were beginning to take shape. He played really well against Saints. And got himself back into the conversation and backed it up again. So you look at the big games, the one that matters. He's come off the bench against Australia, done really well, played well against Sarries and Saints, and now he's come off the bench and done well. Why wouldn't you start someone with that kind of form? Yeah,
they're both responding to this tricky enough dynamic really well.
They are.
And that's credit to them, I think. I mean, because it's a difficult situation. It's been talked about so much. Everything has been scrutinised. Like, I'm sure Prendergast's first 10 minutes is thinking, oh no. You know, he's only human. He's a 21-year-old kid. But he rallied very well too.
Yeah, no, he did, and it's interesting. Obviously, I knew you were going to bring up the out half conversation, and I was thinking maybe I won't answer it today. But what I'd say is the 9 position is nearly more important, and having someone like Gibson Park inside you, and I think Prendergast said it in an interview afterwards. You know, he makes him look good, gives him more time on the ball, takes pressure off him when Ireland don't have the momentum in the phase count. And just manages the game particularly well.
It's an interesting one as well. We don't really have the answer to this, to what extent Farrell is involved in team selection. We know he's a huge Prendergast fan. Easterby keeps his cards closer to his chest. It's obviously, say Easterby in his heart of hearts thinks to himself, I thought Crowley was better. And, if it was just down to me, I'd play him at Murrayfield. there's still a degree where I don't know, will he phone Farrell or just make the decision? But it's not a seismic shift, but it's a change of policy, and you might be damaging the confidence of Prendergast a little bit, and you know what Farrell thinks. It's an unusual dynamic, this election this week.
Yeah, I think there definitely will have been conversations. Like, it'd be unusual to think that you've coached for so many years together, you're good friends. Why wouldn't you lean on a bit of advice, or,
So that's Farrell. That's Farrell saying, "Don't you drop my boy."
I think Easterby's going to be picking this team on his own. He's like, look, this is my Six Nations. I'm the head coach. And I think
even if Farrell says Prendergast has the ceiling, he's our guy, you can't then go, Andy, I respect you. That's why it's so hard to ignore you.
Yeah, no, look, but the thing is, when you're picking the team, it's not just on the week's performance, it's how training's going, what injuries guys are carrying. You can't be picking from outside the camp. You have to be picking from within it. You're doing all the coaches' meetings, having the one-on-ones with players, seeing how they're evolving. That has to be picked from within the camp.
How important is security of tenure as a 10, knowing I'm going to be picked? More so than other positions.
It definitely helps when you know, like, everyone's going to say, I'd much rather know early in the week when I'm starting, and to not feel like I'm competing with a whole lot. But the other side to it is, when you're competing, it's going to spur you on to be better. Okay. It's going to make you review everything with a fine tooth comb. I was listening to Brian O'Driscoll was talking about, like, when 10s were chopping and changing, it made his life a bit more difficult, because certain 10s might take one step out of the ball, or another 10 might take 3 steps out of the ball. Certain 10s, the speed of their pass varied, so you wouldn't be able to run an outline off one where you would off another. So having that consistency is important. But if they're both playing really well, it becomes less important.
Okay, fair point. How highly do you rate the Scots? How tricky is this game?
I rate the Scots highly. I don't rate them any more highly after seeing them against Italy. Like, at 19-0, you're thinking, can they push on here? And then the game next week is going to be a real challenge. They lost their way in the through the second half. But what was impressive was the fragility that they'd shown in previous years. They didn't lose their heads. They were calm. They stuck to the game plan. They persevered with going to the corner, and they played well to get themselves back ahead and stay ahead. Their back line is very effective. Like, White is a good scrum half. Finn Russell's at the top of his game. He's got the full bag of tricks. Van der Merwe on the wing is quality. But what I'd say about those two guys is they've never really played well against Ireland. Ireland are particularly good at coming up against these superstars. And even I'd reference Dupont. When Dupont has played against Ireland, he hasn't played particularly well. So I'd expect Ireland to have a plan to shut down the likes of Russell and Van der Merwe. Tuipulotu is still a big loss, and you could see that at the weekend. That kind of punch that he gives when their forward pack look, they're good, they're cohesive, but they don't have any big game breakers, and they certainly don't have the likes of Sheehan or Conan coming off the bench.
No, that Irish bench was immense, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But there were some bright shoots for Finn Russell when he was playing for Bath against Leinster. The short kicking game, his passing game can unlock defences. They'll take confidence from that. But this Irish team has Scotland's number, and I'd be very confident that we'll go over and win at the weekend.
They really do have their number. I mean, even in law of averages with home advantage every second year, it's just odd, really. Like, 1 win in 15.
Yeah.
10 in a row.
Yeah, like it's the style of a lot of those wins. We've won well.
Yeah.
The one last year, it was like Scotland were like, look, the way we've been playing the last 4 or 5 times hasn't been enough to even come close to Ireland. So let's change our style of play. Let's see if we can kind of beat them in the tight. They did turn that into an arm wrestle. I never really felt like they were going to win that game, but they turned it into a real dogfight.
Ireland weren't very good either.
No, we weren't very good. But it would be, and look, we were, squeaky bum time trying to win a Six Nations. It was Scotland were coming over. with no real pressure on them. It will be interesting to see what style of play Scotland go with. You think it's going to be running rugby, and if they can get quick ball and create a bit of indecision, that's when the likes of Russell and Blair Kinghorn can be really dangerous. They fizz the ball into the wide channels really well. But if Ireland can hold them up in the tackle, create slow ruck ball, there's only so much, even if you're the best out half in the world, that you can do.
Okay. The news, by the way, from the camp: Tig Furlong and John McCarthy remain ruled out for the Scottish game. Finlay Beale and Matt Hansen have both trained today, so should be fine to play. Ian Madigan, that was an education. Thank you very much. So I am sensing win for Ireland, win for Italy, win for France.
Yes. Yeah. The one other point I'd say is Scotland that I noticed in the weekend, they're really focusing on trying to keep the ball alive a bit more. That was the one other thing I'd said, and that is an interesting point and ties into trying to conserve energy. So if they can be effective and win that physical battle and get in behind Ireland with offloads, they could cause us trouble there. But I think we've got too much quality, and it's all going to come down, I think, to that French game now.
Yeah, feels like it. Very good. Chat next week. Thanks, man.
Thanks a million, Joe.